My nephew, Daniel, suffered from a stomach hemorrhage and needed long-term medication. The doctor prescribed a medicine made from dried insect extract, specifically large cockroaches from Dalian, America. My sister-in-law, Emily, wanting to save money, decided to catch cockroaches herself, squeeze out their liquid, filter it, and give it to Daniel. I warned her that cockroaches often carry viruses, bacteria, parasites, and their eggs. But she retorted, "You've studied so much you've become foolish. I boil them in water, then soak them in white alcohol to disinfect them. Isn't that enough?" How could I listen to her when a human life was at stake? I poured all her alcohol-soaked cockroaches down the toilet. Not long after, Daniel started convulsing, foaming at the mouth. After a short hospital stay, he passed away. Emily blamed me for throwing away her homemade medicine, accusing me of killing her entire family. She hated me so much that she lured me back to our hometown, then pushed me off a cliff. I died instantly, my body scavenged by wild animals. When I opened my eyes again, Emily was telling me not to meddle in other people's business. I smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, give me another bottle." Emily shrieked, "Sarah, how dare you throw away my stuff? I'll kill you." As I saw the bottle of alcohol-soaked cockroaches, I knew I had been reborn. The memory of my body plummeting into the abyss made me tremble uncontrollably. In my past life, my nephew, Daniel, suffered from a stomach hemorrhage and needed long-term medication. The doctor prescribed a medicine made from dried insect extract, specifically large cockroaches from Dalian, America. My sister-in-law, Emily, wanting to save money, decided to catch cockroaches herself, squeeze out their liquid, filter it, and give it to Daniel. She even smugly declared, "These people just want to scam us out of our money. Isn't it better if we make it ourselves? It's even purer." The sight of 5 bottles filled with soaking cockroaches immediately gave me goosebumps. I knew that medicinal cockroaches are sterile, while the wild ones Emily caught carried over 50 types of bacteria. I urged her to throw them away, explaining they carried not only bacteria and viruses, but also parasites. But she dismissed it. "You've studied yourself, stupid. I boil them and soak them in alcohol for disinfection, that's enough." Cockroaches carry bacteria that can cause rashes just by touching human skin, let alone being ingested. Because a life was at stake, I firmly refused to listen. Even though she hit and verbally abused me, I still poured all the alcohol-soaked cockroaches down the toilet. After that, she beat me black and blue. Not long after, Daniel started convulsing, foaming at the mouth, and had to be hospitalized. The doctors said bacteria and parasites had invaded his brain. He was diagnosed with parasitic encephalitis. He then suffered from continuous high fever and passed away shortly after. Emily again blamed me, saying I caused Daniel's death by throwing away her medicine. "If you hadn't thrown away my medicine, he wouldn't have gotten sick. You're responsible for killing my entire family." Filled with hatred, she lured me back to our hometown and pushed me off a cliff. "You deserve to die. Go be buried with my family's medicine." I died instantly, my body devoured by wild animals. When I opened my eyes again, Emily was telling me not to interfere. I calmly said, "What are you talking about, sister-in-law? Why would I throw away your things? Give me a bottle." Emily stared at me. "Just a moment ago, you were telling me to throw away the cockroaches, and now you've changed your tune." When I approached the bottle of alcohol, she pushed me aside. I chuckled. "Just kidding, sister-in-law, I'm just kidding. My stomach has been bothering me lately, so I thought I'd take some home to drink." Hearing this, she relaxed, handed me a small bottle, and poured some out. "Sarah, I haven't even caught enough for Leo yet, so here's just a little for you. Do you know how hard it is to catch these? My back has been aching for days." She was subtly hinting that I should give her money. When she handed it to me, a foul, brownish liquid spilled out from the bottle. I suppressed my nausea, took it, washed my hands over 20 times in the restroom, wrapped the bottle in multiple plastic bags, and shoved it into my purse. Then, I transferred 200 yuan to her. "Sister-in-law, you've worked hard. I've transferred some money for you to buy something nice to nourish yourself." She happily opened her phone, but when she saw the amount, she pouted and mumbled, "What can 200 yuan buy? It's not even enough for groceries." I gave her money, and she still complained it was too little. I knew she intended for me to hear. In my past life, she always exploited my pride, complaining about her poverty and hardships to extort money from me. When I was a fresh intern with a low salary, my card was empty, and I only had 50 yuan in my wallet. She still tried to take it. After saying this, she even looked up, scrutinizing me, probably expecting me to transfer more. But this time, I acted as if I hadn't heard anything, focusing only on packing my things. She deliberately let out a loud cough. I walked closer, her eyes now gleaming with undisguised triumph. "Excuse me, I'm not here to give him money, but to bring him water so he doesn't have a dry throat and keeps coughing." I intended to open the fridge to get a glass of iced water, but the sight inside left me speechless. The entire refrigerator was packed with unprocessed cockroach carcasses. The pungent, foul smell filled my lungs, making me bend over and retch. No wonder Daniel still got sick last time, even though I had flushed all the cockroaches down the toilet. It turned out there were even more in the fridge. It was clear that Daniel had never stopped eating cockroaches. Emily was truly calculating. Afraid my brother and parents would blame her, she shifted all the responsibility onto me, making them hate me. I had truly been burdened with a tremendous injustice. She clearly had so much, yet only gave me a tiny bit, but for me, that was more than enough. That evening, I had no appetite for dinner. Recalling the earlier scene made me nauseous. When I went into the kitchen to help carry food, I discovered several large cockroaches crawling on a plate, and I screamed in horror. My mom told me I was overreacting, shooed the roaches away, and brought the food to the table. Emily even tried to take credit in front of my parents. "Mom, Dad, I know Sarah's stomach isn't good, so I've already prepared a bottle for her these past few days." She really knew how to play the good person. If I hadn't asked, would she have given it to me? And call that a bottle? "Oh, Sarah, look how good your sister-in-law is to you. You should be grateful." How ridiculous. If she just didn't try to kill me, I'd thank heaven and earth. What more was there to be grateful for? If I weren't so utterly disgusted, I would have pulled out that tiny bottle to show them. When I saw Daniel, his spirits were very low. After only a few bites, he said he was full. During dinner, they even discussed going to catch cockroaches from trash cans and sewers, wanting me to join them. I made an excuse about needing to work the night shift to escape early. Don't even talk about catching them. If a single cockroach wiggled its antennae in front of me, I'd be so scared I'd jump around like I was electrocuted. Back home, I took out that bottle, cleaned and disinfected it several more times, then put it in a new box before I felt at ease. That night, I even had nightmares of a swarm of cockroaches crawling onto my bed, startling me awake multiple times. Just a little more time, and I would never have to see those disgusting things again. Emily even planned to sell her alcohol-soaked cockroaches on social media, naming her brand New Ancestral Medicine, and priced it several times higher than real medicine. She boasted that the formula was learned from an old immortal professor, and claimed it could not only cure all diseases, but also ward off evil spirits and summon souls. Her reputation spread throughout the neighborhood. She couldn't catch enough cockroaches to sell, leading many relatives to even ask me about it. Right now, I couldn't afford to offend her. I could only gently advise everyone not to drink random concoctions and to follow doctors' prescriptions. The next time I saw her, she was wearing limited edition designer clothes. Even my parents, who usually dress simply, were wearing real silk. They had certainly made a lot of money. "Sarah, don't be jealous of us. I told you to go catch cockroaches back then, but you wouldn't, otherwise I would have shared some money with you. What good is a prestigious university degree? Your income now isn't even as much as mine, and I only finished middle school." But the money she earned, I dared not touch. Everything she made was 3 no's. No license, no testing, no origin. If anything went wrong, she would definitely end up in jail. Moreover, I never looked down on her education. She was just overly sensitive. When Mark wanted to marry her, our parents vehemently opposed it. Even though Mark only had a middle school education, our parents believed he would become successful and should marry someone even more educated than me. But at that time, she was already pregnant, and it was a boy. Our parents had no choice but to accept. After they married, whenever she argued with Mark, our parents would always bring up her education level to suppress her. Recently, I heard that someone who took her 3 no's medicine had to be hospitalized. They wanted to cause a scene, but she used money to silence them, claiming it was an allergic reaction. Daniel had also been bedridden with a fever lately. Emily, fearing recognition, didn't dare take him to the hospital, still believing her medicine worked and even increased his dosage. It's true that some people won't shed tears until they see the coffin. That midnight, Daniel foamed at the mouth, convulsed, and gasped for air. Emily not only had no intention of taking him to the hospital, but even considered letting him die like her other, 3 victims. Mark, understanding the gravity of the situation, kicked her a meter away and rushed Daniel to the emergency room. The doctor immediately examined him and sent him straight to the resuscitation room. My mom called me, crying and begging me to come to the hospital. I brought the bottled Cockroach alcohol in its box to the hospital. When I arrived, a nurse was asking Mark to sign a critical condition notice. Mark's hand trembled as he signed, shaking for a long time before he could stop. Emily clutched her chest, kneeling outside the emergency room, tears streaming down her face. She cried out to heaven, "Oh God, please save Daniel." It was too late to be scared now. After waiting for 3 grueling hours, Daniel was finally brought out of surgery and immediately transferred to the intensive care unit, ICU. The doctor, with a stern face, called our family into the emergency room. "What did you give the patient to eat? His brain isn't just overrun with parasites. His entire body is infected with viruses." At this moment, no one dared to speak. In my past life, Emily hadn't been like this. She defiantly declared, "My son is only in this state because he took your hospital's medicine. If he had continued to use my homemade medicine, he would have recovered long ago." Even though the doctor found her unreasonable, he patiently explained a series of medical facts, but they understood nothing, only thinking that I had thrown away Emily's homemade medicine and harmed Daniel. Let's see how she'll try to justify herself this time. I took the medicine bottle from my bag. "Doctor, this is the medicine my sister-in-law gave my nephew. Recently, he's only been taking this." When the doctor looked into the bottle, his eyes widened in shock, his face filled with rage. "Are these cockroaches? Where did these come from?" Everyone bowed their heads, no one dared to answer. Now, why didn't Emily dare to speak? Before, her tongue was sharper than anyone's. If no one would speak, then I would. The cockroaches were found by my sister-in-law and my parents in the sewers and trash cans. My sister-in-law even said this stuff not only cures all diseases, but also wards off evil spirits and summons souls. The doctor roared furiously. "Is this a joke with someone's life? Wild cockroaches don't just carry parasites, they carry over 50 types of bacteria and viruses. The cockroaches we use for medicine are raised in sterile environments." I interjected. "I've warned Emily before, but she never listened, even arguing back with me. She said it was nonsense." My sister-in-law said that simply boiling them in water and soaking them in alcohol would sterilize them completely. I pretended to argue stubbornly, making the doctor's face turn red with anger. He didn't argue back with me, typing on his computer for a moment before calmly stating, "The bacteria from wild cockroaches cannot be entirely eliminated by that method. The patient's systemic infection is due to this." He pointed to the CT scans, which clearly showed Daniel's brain covered in parasites. "We will do our best to save him, but I regret to inform you, if his fever doesn't break in the next few days, you should prepare for the worst." Upon hearing those last words, my mother and Emily's legs gave way and they collapsed to the floor. My father, who had a heart condition, couldn't withstand the shock and fainted on the spot. My brother clenched his fists, his gaze as cold as a storm. In my past life, Daniel had at least lived for another month, but this time, it was nothing short of a death sentence. Mark carried Dad to a hospital bed, then yelled at Emily right there in the room. "Didn't you say there was no need to go to the hospital, that your medicine would cure him? Now modern doctors are telling me to prepare for a funeral. Don't you know I only have one son in this life? How am I supposed to live now?" Mark had once been in a construction accident. 2 iron rods and 22 screws were implanted in his right leg, almost leaving him permanently disabled, and his private parts had necrotized and had to be removed. At that time, it was fortunate he had a son, so he was less talked about. If Daniel truly died, the gossip from relatives would surely drown him. My brother was someone who valued his reputation. Emily's life from now on would not be easy. Emily, indignant, scratched my brother's face until it bled. "If you earn more money, would I have to be so frugal as to make my own medicine? Didn't I do this for this family?" Even though Mark's salary wasn't high, he gave all of it to her. My parents also gave her extra money every month. Her pocket money, not including living expenses, was over 3,500 yuan per month, and that was when she wasn't spending on miscellaneous things. Yet she was obsessed with designer brands, liking expensive purchases to satisfy her vanity, buying them even if she had to get them on installment. My mom, not wanting them to argue further, tried to shift the blame to me. "Sarah, why didn't you stop your sister-in-law? What's the use of studying for over 20 years?" How could I dare to stop her? I was afraid of losing my life if I did. I almost forgot. They were accomplices too. If my sister-in-law suggested going to catch cockroaches, why didn't Mom and Dad stop her? They even went along and caught them too. "Sister-in-law, our family isn't so poor that we can't afford medicine. Which one of your wardrobe items isn't over 5,000 yuan? Without their help, Emily alone wouldn't have been able to catch so many cockroaches." Every time I came home, she would show off her newly bought designer items, but she was afraid I didn't know the real price. After I finished speaking, Mom's face darkened. Emily also bowed her head in shame, not daring to look at anyone. "What did you say? 5,000 yuan? I work all month and only earn 7,500 yuan. Are her clothes made of gold? Impossible." Emily told me all her clothes were bought on Pinduoduo, at most 200 yuan each. This statement was clearly aimed at me. Although I had over 100,000 yuan in savings, I always lived frugally, never daring to splurge. I immediately took out my phone and opened the series of orders Emily had once bragged to me about. I sent photos of a dozen invoices and orders to the family group chat. By my calculations, in the past 2 years, she had spent over 100,000 yuan on designer goods. The most recent order before Daniel fell ill was a pair of high heels costing over 10,000 yuan. I guess she had spent all their money and, fearing Mark would find out, came up with the idea of making homemade medicine. Emily tried to snatch Mark's and Mom's phones, but was pushed out of the hospital room by Mark. After calculating the total amount, the entire family erupted in curses in the hospital room. My mom said in an angry voice, "My most expensive outfit only cost 300 yuan, and she spends lavishly, buying many items worth over 10,000. I always thought it was strange how a 200 yuan coat could be so good quality. She even lied to me, saying it was Hang brand. "Mom, I think Mark should divorce her. Recently, she tricked you and Dad into making medicine from cockroaches, and she's even selling it. I'm afraid someone will get sick after taking it and come back to settle scores with our family." My mom wasn't foolish. She understood the seriousness of the situation. Mark dragged Emily from outside the hospital room, threw her to the ground, and kicked her. She screamed in pain. My mom also cursed angrily, slapping her repeatedly on both cheeks. This was the first time I had ever seen Mark lay a hand on her. In the past, whenever they argued, if she cried, Mark would soften. But this time, no matter how much she cried, Mark remained resolute. "If I don't divorce her this time, I won't forgive myself." Emily lay on the ground crying, then suddenly stood up in a panic, trying to grab Mark's hand, but he pushed her back down. "Bastard, I won't agree to a divorce. Then you wait for me to sue you in court." It seemed Mark had listened to Mom's words and was determined to divorce her. "Mom, sister, say something to Mark, please," she pleaded for help. "Dream on." I turned my head to look out the window. My mom smiled coldly. "This house can't accommodate a great Buddha like you. If anything happens to my grandson, you'll pay dearly." Back home, Mom told me to sell all the designer items Emily had bought. But most of those clothes had lost their value. They had to be liquidated for only about 40% of their original price. Less than a few days later, Daniel started convulsing again. And just like in my past life, he didn't make it. My parents and Mark hadn't even had a chance to pursue legal action when a crowd of people arrived, demanding to settle scores with Emily. Most of the buyers of her 3-Nos medicine were elderly people in the uneducated neighborhood. I gave money to a few elderly folks, asking them to spread the word. Daniel was in the ICU at Zhanyang Hospital because of Emily's medicine. Some people who had taken her 3-Nos medicine had been hospitalized with severe vomiting and diarrhea, and they had already suspected her. A crowd of people rushed to the hospital, creating a commotion, demanding she pay them back and cover their medical expenses. She was the type to spend 500 yuan as if it were 1,000. Now she had no money left to pay. Ultimately, the police had to be called to resolve the situation. She didn't even get to see Daniel's face one last time. She was taken to the police station, her pleading eyes resting on us, but no one in my family felt any sympathy. The entire family just coldly watched her being led away, not saying a single word. Because the elderly mostly paid in cash, online profits weren't high, and there had been no fatalities, there was no clear evidence that the 3 No's medicine was directly responsible. The police could only reprimand her and demand she refund the money and pay a fine of 70,000 yuan within a week. Emily intended to sell her designer items to pay off the debt, only to discover her wardrobe was empty. Daniel was cremated that very day. My mom didn't even tell her where his grave was. She knelt, begging to visit Daniel's grave. My parents handed her the divorce papers to sign. The terms stipulated she leave empty-handed. How could she accept? If divorced, she would have no place to live. Her family valued sons over daughters. They had previously forced her to marry an old man. She refused, left home, and met Mark. Her mother's family rejected her, calling our family poor, forbidding the marriage, and even forcing her to have an abortion. When we went to discuss the wedding, my mom even used the baby in her womb as a reason to demand the bride price be reduced from 250,000 to 100,000 yuan. At that time, tensions were extremely high. Her family had warned her when she left, "This path is your choice, don't come back crying later." She gave birth to Daniel right after marrying. Only then did my parents start to accept her, even treating her better than me. She knew returning to her birth family would be like jumping into a fire pit. They would undoubtedly seize the opportunity to marry her off for money. I thought she would be driven out, but to my surprise, she continued to stay. I also had to sell her pile of designer items, which fetched 75,000 yuan. My mom even advised her to reconcile with Mark. I truly didn't understand how my mom could change her stance so quickly. But before I could investigate, someone couldn't bear it and came to tell me. Emily came to my rented room, casually flopped onto the small sofa with her shoes still on, looking incredibly arrogant. "Oh, Sarah, how much do you hate me to harm me like this? Are you disappointed that your brother and I aren't divorcing? Let me tell you, we can't divorce. Because I know your mom used the remaining 150,000 yuan from the compensation money to save you. If your dad knew, he would beat her to death." At that moment, the news hit me like a plunge into an icy abyss. When I had just graduated and was interning, on my way home, someone followed me and dragged me into an alley. Luckily, a passerby noticed. Otherwise, I would have almost been raped. I only wanted to borrow a little money from my parents to buy an electric bicycle for safer commuting. But they completely ignored it, even blaming me for reporting it to the police, saying it shamed the family. My mom even blamed me for dressing provocatively, making people think I was a prostitute. I was just wearing a short-sleeved shirt and flared jeans. I was furious. My mom then played her usual poverty card, saying all the family money had been spent on Mark's wedding. At the time, I actually believed her. I had no choice but to borrow some money from friends to rent an apartment near my company. I lived frugally every month. Still feeling sorry for my parents' hardships, I even sent them a bit of pocket money every month. Looking back, I realized how foolish I was. I believed everything my mom said. They would rather give money to outsiders than lend it to me. When I was little, my mom took more than half of Dad's salary to send to her family, forcing Mark and me to eat cabbage for almost an entire year. We were much skinnier than our peers. Dad's income at that time wasn't bad. When he found out about this, he almost beat my mom to death. Only after she repeatedly promised not to send money to her family again did he not divorce her. I was shaking with anger. Seeing my reaction, Emily looked very satisfied. "Don't try to be clever anymore, or I'll introduce you to my cousin. Do you think Mom and Dad would object?" Her cousin was 5 years younger than me, wealthy, but had once beaten his ex-wife to the point of hospitalization, even making the news. My parents always drilled into my head that when choosing a husband, character doesn't matter, only money does. I knew Mom's eyes would light up at the sight of money, and she would definitely force me to agree. But why was she revealing a weakness that gave me leverage over Mom? If my parents really divorced, no one would defend her anymore. Wouldn't that be a huge loss for her? Very quickly, I understood the reason. It turned out she planned to transfer her younger brother's eldest son's household registration to our house. Mark was also worried that no one would take care of him in his old age. He quickly brought the child home and renamed him Leo. She wanted to use me to expose Mom and force my parents to divorce as revenge. But why did I feel that her relationship with that child was not normal? Returning home again, all the cockroaches in the house had been thoroughly cleaned up. Mark seemed to have overcome the grief of losing his son. He held Leo, smiling incessantly. Before, when Daniel was alive, Mark was very busy and rarely spent time with his son. Now he wanted to make up for everything with Leo. Even though he was young, Leo was very good at charming adults, making everyone in the family happy. But I still felt something was off. When near Emily, the child kissed her very intimately. This was an act usually only seen between a biological mother and her child. I became more attentive and secretly went to Emily's maternal village to investigate. I had only been there once. The villagers didn't know me and were wary, unwilling to talk. I bought a bag of eggs and a few pounds of meat and gave them to an elderly woman. Only then did she pull me into her house and tell me the story. It turned out that before marrying into our family, Emily had been married before, but she was too young at the time to register the marriage. Later, her husband died in an accident, and she brought her child back to her birth family. Not long after, her parents forced her to marry an old man. She abandoned her child and ran away, eventually meeting Mark. Throughout the years, that child had been raised by her maternal uncle, only recently taken in by her. My God, she concealed it so well, deceiving my entire family for so many years. But the words of elderly villagers can sometimes be unreliable, so I secretly took saliva samples from Leo and Emily for DNA testing. True or false, it would be clear in a week. During this time, how could I let Emily down? She discovered the remaining amount in the compensation fund when she looked through Mom's financial ledger. In it was also a bank transfer receipt, marked as a loan but still unpaid. Moreover, the transfer date was exactly when she and Mark got married. At that time, Dad was working far away and left everything to Mom. He only returned after the wedding. In other words, Mom had used the money meant for Mark's wedding to lend to her brother. My mom was truly calculating. If Emily hadn't discovered it, I fear I would never have known in this lifetime. That evening at dinner, I began to play along with Emily. Sister-in-law, someone recently introduced a potential match to me. They asked how much our family expects for a bride price. When you married Mark, how much did you receive? Mom, who was eating, suddenly choked and started coughing continuously. Dad's face was serious. We've raised our child this big. Of course, we must follow proper standards, like when your sister-in-law got married. At this moment, sweat began to trickle down Mom's forehead. Dad tried to interject and change the subject. Today, Leo's teacher said he's the smartest student in his class. Let's buy some crab to eat tomorrow. But we had already seen through her tricks. I stated plainly, I only need 100,000 yuan. Back then, our family gave sister-in-law 105,000, didn't we? Dad couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up agitated. Emily, how could you lie like that? Didn't your mother say it was 250,000? Mark chimed in. That's right, it was only that much money. Emily and I personally went to the bank to withdraw it and gave it directly to her mother. Dad immediately pulled Mom up from her chair and roared, You dared to lie to me. What did you do with the rest of the money? Mom trembled all over, not daring to speak. At that moment, Leo, as planned, handed Dad the ledger with the attached transfer receipt. Grandpa, what do these words in this book mean? As Dad took the ledger, the transfer receipt fell out. He picked it up, and upon seeing my maternal uncle's name on the paper, he nearly fainted from rage. I quickly put a heart medication pill into his mouth. It took half an hour for Dad to regain consciousness. You promised me before that you wouldn't send money back to your family again. Now I'm giving you one last chance. If you don't get back the 150,000 yuan in 3 days, we're getting a divorce. Mom collapsed to her knees, snot and tears streaming down her face, clutching Dad's legs and begging, Don't divorce me. Dad kicked her away and went back into his room. Mom sobbed, slapping her own face and banging her head against the door, trying to make a big scene to force Dad to concede. But this time, Dad was determined to divorce, and everyone knew she had only a 1% chance of getting that money back. Mom wailed for a while, then exhausted herself and stopped. She asked Mark and me to accompany her to our uncle's house the next day, wanting us to back her up in demanding the money. When we arrived at our uncle's house, they flat out denied everything, even claiming Mom's ledger was fake. They chased the 3 of us out of the house. Mom immediately lay down on the ground, wailing that she wouldn't leave until she got the money. My uncle and aunt were no pushovers. Seeing that they couldn't get rid of Mom, they took a broom covered in feces and threatened anyone who came near. Seeing that, Mom frantically scrambled up, and the 3 of us were tragically driven out. Mom, not running fast enough, even got some feces on her. She sat outside the main gate, cursing loudly, drawing many villagers to watch. She cursed for over an hour, but no one from their house came out. Mark called the police, who told us we would have to sue them in court. My uncle and aunt had already hired a lawyer and refused on the grounds that there was no loan agreement. The police suggested that Mom find a way to trick her brother into admitting the loan, recording it as proof. But my uncle and aunt had blocked all communication and fled to another province. 3 days later, Dad presented the divorce papers. Under his pressure, Mom was forced to sign. Emily was very pleased with the outcome. "Sarah, you've been truly clever this time." "Exactly, if I remained foolish, coming back to life would be pointless. Moreover, my cleverness isn't just that. The DNA test results are also in. They are indeed biological mother and son." The private detective I hired had also found wedding photos and videos of Emily with her ex-husband. Mark, wanting to boast to relatives that he had adopted a new child, planned a grand birthday party for Leo. My biological nephew had just passed away less than a month ago, not yet laid to rest peacefully, and Mark was already hastily announcing a new son. "Sarah, for Leo's birthday, you, as his aunt, should give a red envelope with tens of thousands, you know." How could she be so shameless? I'd rather burn the money than give it to them. When the MC announced, "This is Mark Lee's son, Leo Lee," the large screen behind him projected wedding photos of Emily and her ex-husband. Mark froze on the spot. Emily immediately snatched the microphone. "Those are just old photos with an ex-boyfriend. We broke up right after that shoot." Immediately after, the screen switched to a wedding video, clearly showing her pregnant, about 7 months along. Let's see how she'll try to justify herself this time. Before she could think of an excuse, I projected the DNA test results. My family had become a complete laughingstock. I still remember when the Lee family's daughter-in-law got married, they said it was her first marriage. Who knew she was not only already married but also had a child? His own son just died not long ago, and he hastily adopted a new son, clearly wanting an immediate replacement. Emily is truly the Greek goddess of premarital pregnancy. It's hilarious. His biological son died, yet he still accepts his wife's child with another man as his own son. I think this is the biggest joke of my life. Mark's face turned ashen. In front of so many relatives and friends, he beat Emily severely. This time, Dad was not just dizzy but fainted completely, even though I had given him heart medication. This time, the medicine was useless. Dad suddenly fell from his chair, unconscious. At the hospital, the doctor shook his head. The patient suffered severe agitation, leading to acute cerebral hemorrhage. The bleeding is quite extensive and requires immediate surgery. Within a short 2 months, my family had signed critical condition notices twice. Mark couldn't bear it anymore. Tears streamed down his face as he collapsed in the hospital corridor, wailing. Tragically, after the surgery, Dad suffered a second cerebral hemorrhage and passed away not long after. Mark's hatred for Emily intensified. He not only beat her but also verbally abused her with venomous words. "You promiscuous woman, you got pregnant before marriage to deceive me, and then you dared to bring that bastard son home? You're the one who killed Dad. If it weren't for you, he'd be fine." Emily, realizing reconciliation was impossible, showed her true colors. They lunged at each other. "My son isn't a bastard. Even if we divorce, I'll still get half the house and the car." They fought until security had to intervene. That night, as Emily slept, Mark took out a knife, intending to stab her. The noise woke her, and she grabbed a fruit knife from the table, retaliating. The two stabbed and slashed at each other. My mom realized something was terribly wrong. By the time she arrived, both of them were lying in pools of blood. At the hospital, Mark had lost too much blood and needed an urgent transfusion. Both he and I had a rare blood type, panda blood. The hospital had no reserves, only I could save him. My mom called me, only to find I had blocked her number. Emily was not so lucky. The doctor checked her eyelids and said there was no need for resuscitation. Mark, not receiving a timely blood transfusion, struggled for a while and then passed away. My mom couldn't bear this shock. She went insane, laughing and crying in the hospital, even threatening to jump off the building. She was eventually admitted to a psychiatric hospital. I arranged the funerals for both of them. Then, I took their ashes and scattered them down the very cliff where they had killed me in my previous life, so their souls would also experience the pain of falling from a great height. I also took the child back to Emily's maternal family. After all, the child was innocent. When I informed her family that Emily had died, no one wanted to come to see her one last time. They even told me to dispose of the ashes as I saw fit. A year later, I visited my mom. She looked as if she had aged 10 years, her hair completely white. Seeing me, she became agitated. "Sarah, I dreamed I pushed you off a cliff, that I killed you. Thank goodness it was just a dream." "No, it wasn't a dream. Your family is the one that killed me. Now only you are left alive." My mom seemed to recall everything at once, collapsing to the floor, clutching her head and crying. "I killed them all. It's all my fault. I deserve to die." "Yes," I agreed. "If you had made your daughter-in-law listen to the doctor, your grandson wouldn't have died. If you hadn't given money to your brother, Dad wouldn't have suffered a brain hemorrhage from anger. If you had held on to your son, he wouldn't have stabbed his wife and then died himself. It's all because of you." I spoke those shocking words to provoke her. That night, she secretly climbed onto the rooftop of the psychiatric hospital. She jumped to her death, and I too scattered her ashes down the cliff. An entire family had to perish completely. Based on my memories from my past life, I invested in stocks and made a considerable fortune. All the houses and cars in the family were in my name. I felt no attachment to them. I sold everything. I also sponsored tuition for many young girls who couldn't afford to go to school and built a school of hope in the countryside. I am very satisfied with my current life and have even started my own company.